Unlike budding, which can be performed before or during the growing season, most grafting is done during winter and early spring while both scion and rootstock are still in dormant stage. Continuous plants may be moved indoors during the actual grafting process. After grafting, these plants are placed in greenhouses or in unheated overwintering houses. Field-grown stock, of course, must be grafted in place. Some deciduous trees are commonly grafted as bare rootstock during the winter and stored until spring planting. Indoor winter grafting is often referred to as a bench grafting because it is accomplished at a bench. The whip and tongue technique is most commonly used to graft most apple varieties that go into 2-year production of branch or knip nursery plants. Both the rootstocks and scion should be of equal size and preferably no more than 15 mm in diameter. Knip means that 1-year-old plant is cut at a height of 65 cm to 90 cm and that next season a branch plant is grown from the new top shoot, which will have more lateral branches at the end of vegetation. Summer grafting is used at species and varieties that have lower vigor or spur types of apple in order to have a better growth during the vegetation because they are grafted on already well-rooted rootstocks with better developed roots which were planted earlier in the nursery. Budding is a grafting technique in which a single bud from the selected scion is used rather than an entire scion which contains many buds. Most budding is done just before or during the growing season. However, some species may be budded during the winter while they are still in dormant stage. During the budding in August and September, the scion joins with rootstocks and remains dormant until next spring, which is why this budding is called dormant budding. Budding on the dormant scion is done from the middle of July to the middle and even the end of September, which depends on the fruit species. Tea budding was mostly commonly used for summer budding of apples, peaches and pears. Tea budding must be one when the bark will sleep. The exact time when this condition occurs depends on soil moisture, temperature and time of year. It depends on species and variety, but should not be added when the air temperature exceeded 32 degrees. Second, bud should be inserted on the cooler north or east sides of stems. A rootstock is grown in the field where it will be budded. Since budding is generally done less than 15 cm above the soil surface, leaves and side branches must be removed from this portion of the rootstock to create a clean, smooth working area. To avoid quickly dulling the knife, remove any soil from the rootstock where the cut will be made just before actual budding takes place. The stem can be cleaned by brushing or rubbing it gently by hand or with a piece of soft cloth material. If there was no precipitation 10 to 15 days before grafting, one watering should be done in order to better separate the bark from the trees. Budding knives usually have a curved type, making it easier to cut a T-shaped slit. First, insert the point of the knife and use a single motion to cut the top of the T. Then twist in perpendicularly to the original cut and rock the blade horizontally down the stem to make the vertical slit of the T. If bark is slipping properly, a slight twist of the knife at the end of this cut will pop open the flaps of the cut and make it easier to insert the bud. In practice, the top of the T is usually slanted slightly. The bud to be inserted is often just a shield of bark with the bud attached to a very thin layer of wood with both the bark shield and bud attached. Various techniques can be used to make these cuts, but the shape of the cut remains the same. Begin the first scion cut about 15 mm below the bud and draw the knife upward just under the bark to a point at least 5 mm above the bud. Grasp the petiole from the detached leaf between the thumb and forefinger of the free hand. Make the second cut by rotating the knife blade straight across the horizontal axis on the bud stick and about 5 mm above the desired bud. This cut should be deep enough to remove the bud, its shield of bark and a thin sliver of wood. If the length of the bark is longer and does not enter the made cross-section of the rootstock, then the excess bark is cut off so that the bud fits well. Pull the cut together by winding a 10 to 15 cm long budding rubber around the stem to hold the flaps tightly over the bud shield and preventing drying. Secure the budding rubber by overlapping all windings and tucking the end under the last turn. Do not cover the bud. After 10 to 15 days, it can be determined whether the budding was successful or not. If a part of the left stalk falls off easily when touched with the finger, then it is a sign that the budding has successful. And if the left stalk is dried, dull and difficult to separate from the bud, it means that the budding has not been successful. The bud for budding can be prepared only with the bark without wood, since it is considered that this part does not play a significant role in the process of callus. The principle of grafting is the same as when using a bud with a wood. Instead of T-budding, chip budding is increasingly used. Chip budding is a technique that may be used whenever mature buds are available. Because the bark does not have to slip, the chip budding season is longer than the T-budding season. Species whose bark does not slip easily without tearing may be propagated more successfully by chip budding than by T-budding. It is done during the summer, most often during August and the beginning of September. Before grafting is started, it is necessary to prepare the rootstocks and buds. The thickness of the scions or buds that are removed from budding should be slightly thinner than rootstock itself due to better adhesion and reception after grafting. In the continental climate, the budding is mostly on the dormant bud, which will start next vegetation. Therefore, when choosing scion and buds, it is important to choose 1-year-old shoots that are well ripened and woody and finished with active growth. It is not recommended to use immature green parts of the shoots on which the buds are, because there is a great possibility of their start after grafting and freezing during the winter. The buds used during budding must be freshly cut and without leaves and stored in a cool, humid place until the moment of grafting. When removing the leaves from scions, care should be taken not to damage the buds. The rootstocks are cleaned a few days earlier from the side shoots and leaves to a height of 15 to 25 centimeters. It is better to clean the rootstock from the side branches during the summer, because then it is easier to remove them. Immediately before grafting, removal should be done with sharp grafting knives or scalpels. After removing the lateral branches and before grafting, the rootstock should be wiped with a damp cloth to remove dust particles and soil that may interfere with grafting. Although all the basics in handling budwood and stocks are the same for chip budding and tee budding, the cuts made in chip budding differ radically. The first cut on both stocks and scions is made at 45 to 60 degrees downward angle to a depth about 3 to 4 millimeters. After making this cut on a smooth part of the rootstock, start the second cut about 20 millimeters higher and draw the knife down to meet the first cut. The exact spacing between the cuts varies with the species and the size of the buds. Then remove the chip. Cuts on both the scion to remove the bud and rootstock to insert the bud should be exactly the same. Although the exact location is not essential, the bud is usually positioned 1/3 of the way down from the beginning of the cut. Wrapping is extremely important in chip budding. If all exposed edges of the cuts are not covered, the bud will dry out before it can take. Chip budding has become more popular over the past years because of the availability of thin 2 mm polyethylene tape as a wrapping material. This tape is wrapped to overlap all of the injury, including the bud, and forms a miniature plastic greenhouse over the healing graft. The tape is removed by cutting with the longitudinal cut on the opposite side of the grafted bud. In relation to the tee grafting, the chip bud grows faster and better with the rootstocks, which results in better quality of the nursery plants. Budding techniques combine the science and the art of horticulture knowledge. Acquiring practical skills in the art of budding, on the other hand, requires hours and even years of practice to be perfected. Usually, the careful supervision of a trainer propagator is required for the serious student of budding to learn this art.